Welcome back, everybody, to the Wild Faith Podcast. My name is Evan Bungham. I have my co-host Luke Timmons with me here today, and we have a very special guest. We have Shane Simpson in the house, a returning guest. We're excited to have him on. So without further ado, Shane, how you doing today?
I'm a special guest, huh?
Special guest. Honorary guest.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Dealing with a little cold here, and but I'll make do. So, listeners or viewers, if you hear a little scratchiness in my voice, that's what it is. Just a little disclaimer from the get-go.
Gotta love fall.
Yeah.
'Tis the season. Yeah, well, I mean, like, kind of just going into things here. I know we were chatting a little bit before we hopped on, but have you had a chance to make it out in the woods, at least for bow opener so far? I know it's been extremely hot here in southeastern Minnesota,
Yeah,
Minnesota in general.
So, yeah, I made a trip out west already. I was out there for, about 6 days of hunting. I was supposed to be out there for much longer, but my girlfriend wanted me to come home, and, whatever. So I made a deal with her. I said, hey, if I get to go back in October, I'll come home early. I was already planning on going in October, but I made it sound like it was her decision. She's like, yeah, come on home and you can go back in October. So I've only hunted once since I've been back home. Actually, that was the day before yesterday. So
Nice.
Not a whole lot of hunting.
Were you out in South Dakota or North Dakota?
I won't say. It was out west.
Out west. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's 'tis the season for that.
People will probably figure it out, but it's out west.
Nice.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, especially here in southeastern Minnesota, I shouldn't even say south, even central, I mean, just kind of all across the state, I feel like it's been hot and buggy. I think between Luke and I mean, the one time I think I've been out, the one weekend for opener, and since then, I think I've done some scouting, and other than that, I've just been waiting, and it looks like next week, we're finally getting that first really big front to push through.
Yeah, and there's going to be some rain associated with that too, though. So that's no good.
That's
not
right.
for me.
Right.
It'll be interesting, and and we're gonna get into a whole bunch of things in this episode. I want to kind of dive into more of your whitetail hunting tactics, talking about you hunt with your trad bow, and then kind of closing it out with talking about the TRAKR app and how you got into all that. But just as a refresher for viewers that were listening last time, I know last time we kind of primarily focused on turkey hunting and just kind of your back end story, but just tell us a little bit about your younger years getting into whitetail hunting, and then kind of how you came into filming your hunts again and where you're at today.
Yeah, so I lived in a rural area in South Carolina. Growing up, you just went out behind the house, BB guns and stuff, shooting whatever. My dad didn't hunt, so I was basically self-taught. I started off with using a shotgun for deer. Buckshot is legal in South Carolina. And I know up here it gets a lot of hate, but it's actually a very effective round. And
I'm sure
I won't go into all that, but one day my brother borrowed a bow from a friend of his, and I saw it laying on his bed, and I fell in love with it. And so I got one that Christmas, and I've been hunting with a bow ever since. I was like 14 then. Gave up gun hunting for deer at that point, and then started filming my hunts early on also around that same time. Went and saved up my money and bought a camcorder, and I'd film anything I could: dove hunting, squirrel hunting, deer hunting. And I don't know, we don't have to go into a whole lot of details, but that's basically how it got started, and here I am today.
Love it. Do you still have some of that archival footage from way back when?
No, and I wish I did. I don't even know what happened to it. I had stacks of VHS tapes and stuff, and I don't know what happened to it. When you're younger, you don't think about that stuff. I wish I had some. Mm-hmm. I've got some footage from early 2000s on a little mini DV camera. It had the little tape. They're on like DVDs and stuff. Some of it's I've digitized since, but it's very low quality stuff. But some of it's interesting to go back and look at it from early 2000s.
Is there one hunt that you wish you could have back that you recorded?
I don't know. I don't remember all the things I recorded.
Too many to count, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've had a camera most of my life. I wish I had the footage. Well, I didn't have any footage. My brother was videoing me on one hunt. We were going to go out there and hunt all day. I got two brothers. One brother was filming me. The other was hunting. And at lunchtime, we got down and met up for lunch. And my brother didn't want to go back out there for sit anymore. He wasn't a diehard hunter like I was. And that evening, I had a doe come in, and then a buck come in, and I got an opportunity, and he wasn't there to film it. I had a fox come in also, and I had all kinds of stuff going on. I'm like, of course, when he leaves, all the stuff happens. So I mean, I wish I'd had that on video, but that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, I could think if there was one hunt with my sister who does not hunt now, and she was probably, I don't know, 9 or 10 at the time. Would have been her first turkey hunt ever with my dad and I, and it was one of the cooler turkey hunts I've ever experienced in my life. We had this Tom come in. He must have been less than, I don't know, 6 yards, and we're sticking out. I don't know how he didn't see us. My sister's sitting in my dad's lap. I'm sitting here with the little camcorder filming it all, and she could have like, with the barrel of the gun, hit this turkey in the head. And she just whiffs at probably 5 yards and then whiffs again at like 15 yards. And I'll just never forget that moment, because that day I was like, she is never hunting again. Yeah. And she never did. But it's a cool footage though. And I wish I could get that back. But
describing that earlier hunt reminded me of another one in that same exact tree stand. I was hunting one evening by myself, and I wish I'd had that on video. And something was coming through the woods, and I couldn't quite tell what it was. And then I got a good look at it, and it was coming right down the trail to me. It was a huge buck, and it was a calico. It had splotchy white and brown on it. And he turned to go down another trail, and I drew my bow back. And I don't know if it was just nerves or what, but I shot, and I hit right under him. And he took off, and I never saw that deer again. But he was a huge, looked like what's the horses with all the big, was it Palomino or not Palomino?
Oh, yeah.
Clydesdale?
The ones with the brown coat with the big splotchy whites. That's what he was.
Yeah.
He was like just big, huge, irregular spots all over him. But he was real cool looking buck.
Dang. Yeah,
I've never seen that out as far as a deer.
Yeah, only one I've seen.
You're in Wisconsin now. You can see albinos.
Yeah,
oh yeah, I've seen a lot of those turkey hunting. They need to do something about that in those areas, because pretty soon there ain't gonna be any brown deer to
Can you shoot albinos?
Not in Wisconsin.
Not Wisconsin.
Yeah, and they're gonna have an issue at some point where all they're gonna have is white deer, no brown ones to shoot.
They're gonna
That'll the switch.
I was gonna say it'd be pretty easy to see, but
Yeah, I wish
Really easy.
I wish those regs weren't based on emotions and
Right.
whatever beliefs or whatever, like it's a spiritual, it's bad luck or whatever. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? It's bad luck.
Well, technically, can you shoot a pieball?
Yeah, if they have
It's
any
like
brown,
half and half.
if they have any brown on them, that's not like mud or something. The fur color is actually brown. You can shoot those.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, I was looking back at footage actually before we hopped on here. I don't know why I was going through old deer footage, but South Dakota 3 years ago when I was over by Camp Crook, there was wasn't a pieball, but sometimes you get those whitetails that have just the really white undercoat and that like really white underjaw. I'm looking back at this footage, and it's probably like 125-inch deer, not a giant, but like a respectable deer. And I think it was day 2 of our trip, and I never really noticed the colors that he had on him until I just like now. And I'm looking back, and I'm like, why did I not shoot that deer? I mean, he was just a beautiful looking deer, and like I just saw his horns, and like, I'm gonna pass.
It was a good memory though.
Like, oh yeah, cool memory. I'm glad I have the footage. But I mean, that's where it's like, I think that's the fun thing about recording your hunts. It's challenging, but it is pretty rewarding to like know that you could have that memory and share that memory forever. As long as you don't lose it on a drive, because I've done that too.
One of the other benefits is you get to go review the shot if you have questions about it. So that's what's nice, using a your cell phone or an action camera or something, it's best to have it in a static position where it's, the recoil of the bow or a gun is not affecting it. That's where I find, it's nice, to go back and relive those hunts, but I also find it very useful when, analyzing the shots. And I love it as a tracker when the hunters have footage of it, so we can, determine that's really nice when to go after a deer or start tracking.
When did you, I mean, like, we'll get into it a little bit in depth a little bit later, but just tell us, when did you kind of transition to getting really into tracking?
That occurred in, I think it was like spring of 2016, where I went on a media turkey hunt. We had some people in the industry, and they wanted me to come there and hunt with those folks. And the neighbor was a tracker, and so in the evening he'd come over to the cabin and tell tracking stories, and I found them very interesting. It was like, oh man, this sounds so cool. And so the following year, or not long after that, I got my dog Callie. In 2017, I started tracking with her. I mean, just his stories were so intriguing. I was like captivated. I'm like, yeah, this is something I want to do. And so that's when I got involved, and basically I went all in and gave up a lot of deer hunting at that point. I've started transitioning lately to getting back into more deer hunting and less tracking, but yeah, I still do both.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, we're here, so we might as well just kind of go with this. I was so curious with, obviously now, like, you started the TRAKR app and kind of going through that, and just break down just kind of how, obviously you just talked about how you kind of got inspired to get into tracking, but like, how did you come about with the idea of coming up with this app and trying to help out other hunters?
Yeah, so I'm an admin for the Minnesota tracking dogs. I started tracking, and it wasn't legal here in Minnesota, so I was tracking in Wisconsin. We started pushing for it and got it legalized here. Other trackers started coming out of the woodwork or getting involved in tracking, and we created the Minnesota Tracking Dogs Facebook page. And I was involved with that. One thing led to another. Here I am, an admin, and I work weekends, so most of the trackers are tracking on the weekend. And so I was behind the scenes as a dispatcher, basically. When hunters would message the page or whatever, I was trying to find them a tracker, message in the group or whatever. And I was like, man, this is a lot of work. I got to streamline this. So we created a website, and then we created a form where they could fill it out if they needed tracking assistance, and submit it, and it would email us automatically, all the admins. And then the admins as a group would find a tracker for them. And that was kind of like the proof of concept. I already had the thoughts in my head, mobile app would be great for this. And so that 1 year using that form for hunters to use made our work a lot easier and streamlined things. But I felt that it could be streamlined even more with an app, and so I got it with some. I actually wanted to start building it sooner, like several years earlier, but it's so expensive, and I just kind of put it on the shelf. But then, another year of being an admin and doing all that work and stuff, still a lot of work, even with the website. I was like, we got to build this app. So I found some buddies to go in with me financially, and we started building it. And, here we are. We launched in fall of 2023.
And it's a slick app. I mean, just kind of going, I've got it pulled up over on the side here for the web page and then the app on my phone. But I just think of, it's still interesting to me to think, like, growing up as a kid, like, obviously you could never, it was illegal for the longest time. And then you'd hear, I just remember, like, reading about it in stories, like, people down south using dogs, and obviously Wisconsin was legal. And then hearing about people using, like, dogs to, like, bear or tree bears. And then, like, the same thing, like, I got an experience go hunt hogs down in Oklahoma with dogs. And I never thought about how big of a tool that they could potentially be.
Yeah.
And I think for you, it's really interesting because I feel like you just get to see so many other things that a hunter doesn't get the experience. I mean, it's almost like a habitat manager where they go to so many different properties. I feel like you've seen so many different, like, scenes of tracking where you have so much inside knowledge to, like, shot placement, what happened, and just understanding how deer react to getting shot and all that stuff.
Yeah, the biggest surprise for me was how resilient deer are. When I was just getting into deer hunting, I felt like if I drew blood, that was a dead deer. And then I realized, like, no, you got to do more than that. And then even when I got into tracking, I felt like these shots that get into the chest cavity, that's a dead deer. But we're seeing deer survive. Not often, but we're seeing deer survive some of these shots, like a double lung. It's very rare, but I've seen it, and I've got photo proof of it. So that was the biggest surprise for me. Not necessarily what deer do after they're shot, but how tough they are. Especially when you get into the rut, those bucks. They just get even tougher.
For sure. Their testosterone and their adrenaline is just so high that their will to survive is just through the roof. I mean, like, I've seen deer get shot and immediately get up and start chasing does.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, and we've had examples of that where a hunter shot a buck that was, tending a doe, following the doe, and they went separate directions. A little while later, the buck come back by looking for that doe, and he was bleeding out both sides. They just don't seem to realize they're really hurt.
So I'm looking at the app right now, and there's that at the bottom of the page. It talks about the tracking analytics piece, and it looks like you're able to like pick, how the deer's position as far as broadside, quartering away, bow gun, that kind of stuff. And then Are you able to actually hit to where the shot hit, and then it would give you the recovery rate?
No, not yet. We're going to add a feature like a drop-down menu where you can select certain cells or maybe a zone or whatever, because that's something interesting I want to see too. Like in this particular area of a deer, what's the recovery rate there versus this other area? And we have a lot of things we want to do. It's just a process, because every little thing we do costs a lot of money. And so we have a list of things we want to do, all right, which is priority, because we can only do this year, and this year.
Right.
I mean, the app's improved a ton since we launched. There's a lot of extra features and other benefits for, the tracking side of things, not just the analytics.
Yeah, well, especially just being able to get connected with, a local tracker, and, because if you just don't have something like that at your fingertips, how would you ever get a hold of somebody?
Yeah, and the other benefit of it is because the networks we use, to help vet the trackers. There's a high confidence level when you hire somebody through the app that, they have a trained tracking dog.
Incredible.
And if they don't have a huge amount of experience, you'll see that on their profile. They have provisional accounts, whatever. Basically, this is a new tracker. Okay. If you can't find someone else, then there's an option.
Right. So walk me through, because obviously you're not only one of the founders of the app, but also you have a dog that does it as well. So just kind of walk us through, like, what that entailed because I love talking dog training, and so just kind of walk us through that of how you basically can get a dog to follow a blood trail. Yeah,
so I'll go through it. It's going to be brief, but there's a lot more to it. But basically, I started off with just a piece of liver, and I just drug it through the yard, and I brought it out there and let her track it. So I would give her the command, find it. So you start training them, commands and that you want them to follow something. Then I transitioned to deer hooves pretty quick. I know some people use blood and stuff, but I use just deer hooves from deer that were shot and ran, because not only do they follow the interdigital gland between the hooves, but the deer put off odors. Just like they say a dog can sense when you're afraid. It's because your body, when you're afraid, it's dumping odors that of fear. Coyotes and wolves, when they're able to pick out a wounded or a sick animal out of a herd, those animals are dumping odors that the canines can pick up on. So I started training her with hooves. I just strap it to a stick and walk it, 100 yards, and then bring her out there and let her find it. And then she starts learning that, this odor means this is a deer that I'm going to find dead, this wounded odor. And that's how they're able to, tell if a deer's not dead. If you train with those types of hooves from deer that ran off and have that odor, when you go on a track where the deer is not mortally wounded, it puts off those odors initially, but then it calms down and quits putting it down, and that's where the dog usually gives up on the track. And then you say, okay, we know the deer's alive or not mortally wounded. But basically, you lay those practice tracks, And over time, you just increase the length of them and you increase the age of them. Like if I go lay a track, I may wait 8 hours before I bring her on it. Then I, as she gets good with that, then I'll, lengthen the track and age it 8 hours, and lengthen the track and put some 90-degree turns and backtracks. And then I'll start aging them even longer, 24 hours, etc.
Sure.
And then you may want to throw some distractions in there, like go lay a mock track, age it 8 hours, and then bring a hide or something, a piece of hide from another deer, and drag it across the trail so it's really fresh. And then put your dog on it, and when it gets to that point where that fresh scent is, they're probably going to take it. But then you can correct them. And it's like, no, we need to stay on this deer here. Things like that.
That's genius.
So, I mean, that's the basics of it. But
Yeah.
you can find a lot of stuff online as far as training.
Oh, for sure. And then go ahead.
Go
Ed.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as far as like, if somebody shoots a deer, what would be your recommendation? As far as, they didn't see a drop, but took off running, and then just kind of obviously like disappeared off into the woods. Like, what is the recommendation as far as should they just like wait and then immediately, get in contact with someone through the TRAKR app, or what does that kind of look like?
Well, I mean, if you think you made a good shot, don't be in a rush to go track it, but it's probably going to be dead within a few minutes.
Sure.
But I usually take my time and get out of the tree and get my gear together and stuff. So it's been over a half hour at least, and I start trailing it. If you made a bad shot, obviously like a gut shot or something, you're not going to have much blood to follow. So, it's probably in your best, especially up here where we all track for tips, it's probably in your best interest to just go ahead and get a dog on it and find it real quick. But also not real quick because you need to give a gut shot time, to expire to go sept it. But if you think you made a good shot and you're tracking it, and then the trail, the blood, starts getting sporadic, or sometimes stuff clogs the hole. Right. Basically, I tell hunters is anytime you start having questions about difficulty tracking it, or questions about maybe I didn't hit it where I thought I did, you start questioning things, or it's taking you way too long to advance the track. A dog can come in there and find it really quick.
Real quick, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on tracks where they covered 600 yards and it took them 5 hours, 4 hours, and then I come in there and start my dog at the hit site, and we cover that that distance in a matter of seconds, and then we go another 300 yards to the deer, and we find the deer in 5 minutes.
Has there been times that you've seen people give up on a track and they were within maybe 50 yards of that deer?
Yep, 50 yards exactly. I had a buddy call me, went down there and track, and they were just having trouble finding the next drop of blood. And Callie took me right to from the hit site to their last blood, and 50 yards down the hill, there lay the deer behind a bunch of brush. And we've had a lot of people, once they use a dog, like they're really struggling to find the deer, and we come out there and find it like that. They'll shoot another deer the following year or that season and say, hey, I don't know if I actually need a dog, but it would make it so much quicker to find this deer. You want to come out,
That's right.
Especially in the early season when it's slow, we don't get a lot of calls. I don't mind going out there and running my dog on it.
Sure.
Do you think people have maybe not a misconception, or maybe it's just human nature to where they think they're too good to call in to get help?
Yeah, there's some arrogance from some people. And I mean, I see it all the time, these comments, like, oh, if you need a dog, you need to learn how to track, or, whatever, you're relying on a dog. But, a dog, if I had, I've got a dog, if I shoot a deer, the first thing I'm doing is getting my dog. Not only to give her some practice, but, she can find that deer in seconds, where it takes me, an hour or two to track it sometimes, depending on the blood trail.
Yeah.
My main thing is I just want to let her run a trail, if I don't have other tracks to go on. But yeah, I see the arrogance from some people. It's like, oh, you need a dog, and, I've been hunting for 30 years and I've only lost one deer in my life. I'm like, maybe that's what this guy is, his first deer in 30 years he's lost, So they don't think about that. I'm like, that's the stupidest comment I've ever heard, Maybe if you'd used a dog back then, you wouldn't have lost that deer.
Yeah, you'd be batting 100. Yeah. That's funny.
I think about, unfortunately I've lost a couple of deer here these last few years, and they've been all out west. And I could maybe have reached out to somebody. Actually, I don't even know legality wise if it is legal out in the
Yeah,
Dakotas, but
it's legal in just about every
is it?
state. It's just a couple, like 2 states, it's not.
And like
Gotcha.
those are instances I would have loved to have a dog, being out on a trip like that when you're spending a lot of money and, I think this deer's dead, but, you're struggling to find blood. But even what I was going to go with is like, I think of like when I've hunted in Minnesota a couple times, we always think about, oh, we got a really big rain coming that night. Like it's going to wash away all the blood. We're not going to be able to find anything, or we got a big snow coming. Is there lots of instances like that where that might throw a dog for a loop or anything like that where you get like unfavorable weather conditions?
No, the rain is not an issue. Actually, we get a lot of tracks, when there's a rain in the evening, like right after sundown,
Mm-hmm.
because people go out and hunt, and then the blood messes up the blood trail. Snow is not really a factor either, unless it's like a really, really deep, heavy snow.
Sure.
But I mean, I like tracking with Callie. She just buries her nose in the snow and kind of pushes out of the way and sniffs. It slows her down a little bit, but they can
Yeah.
still track in those conditions. Rain doesn't hurt the scent trail. It just provides us with more tracks to go on because hunters can't follow the blood.
With just because my brain's moving now. I mean, with like, because it just makes me think of like my dog pheasant hunting. Is that something that you'd still be able to do both, as far as being having a dog that tracks for blood and deer, but also be able to hunt with it?
Yeah, it's a number of our trackers do use their dogs for multiple things. Shed
Okay.
hunting, grouse hunting, pheasant
Yep.
hunting, etc.
Okay.
My thinking is I want my dog to be one thing to focus on. I don't even like them in the yard when they chase squirrels and rabbits. I don't want them. I want them only concentrating on deer.
Sure.
Does it improve the success rate? No. The recovery rate after you take a number of tracks is always going to be around 40%, just because
Okay.
that's just the way the law averages work out. A lot of those deer aren't mortally wounded, and so it always ends up being around 40%. If you look at the app right now, the recovery rates, what are they hovering around 40%, and that's nationwide. So you look at some of these dogs that are pheasant hunting and tracking, they have the same recovery rate as Callie, and all she does is track deer. So yeah, you can do both, and as long as the dog knows what it's doing at that time. And when you put your tracking vest on a dog, that dog knows it's tracking deer. When you're pheasant hunting, it may not have that vest on or the lead, so
Right.
they know in their mind what they're doing.
Sure.
And I think, that's the crazy thing of like why, once again, like I just love dogs because I think people forget not just how smart they are, but just
Yeah.
like their abilities to like literally just do things that are like unfathomable. Like I think about like I love my golden retriever, I really do, and I'm sure Copper in another life maybe would have been a good hunting dog of something, but he's just a good family dog. But it's just amazing me. I think of all the dogs that I've had over the years growing up hunting and just how naturally good they were at hunting. And the few that we trained, for pheasant hunting and stuff like that, they were really good. But like, I just think of like, how many like man hours do you think you've put into training her?
Oh, probably not as much as I should have because she was my first tracking dog, and
Yeah.
plus I'm a busy person. It was quite a bit. I'd get her out there several times a week, and train her for that first year. I couldn't tell you how many man hours, but it was quite a bit. Not as, like I said, not as many as some people. They run multiple dogs, and so they're doing several practice tracks with each dog a week. So they're doing probably thousands of hours, in a year
Yeah.
of training.
I mean, is there a certain breed or something like people that are into the tracking side of things specifically that they're looking into getting in for a dog?
There's some popular breeds, like right now the Bavarian Mountain Hound seems to be a very popular breed. Any of the hounds are popular. The little wire hair Dachshunds, the Teckles, that's a popular breed. It's from Europe, and so they use it a lot over there, and a lot of people are using it over here. And I brought up actually because now we're tracking dog breeds on the app. The tracker adds in their toolbox adds a dog and the certification and the breed and everything, and the date of birth, so we have the age as well. And so, one of the things we may start doing, like in the Broadhead Spotlight, there may be like a dog spotlight where it shows, not necessarily like which is better than the other or anything like that, but just show like how many of these dogs are on the app, versus this breed and versus this breed. And then you'll be able to filter like, what's the recovery rate of this dog versus, this
Sure.
one off lead in the south versus this one on lead in the north. And the ones off lead are obviously going to have a much higher recovery rate because, they're baying deer and, where they can come in there and dispatch it, where, it might be a leg hit deer that, not necessarily would die, but at least they're able to bay it up and dispatch it. And it may die. Coyotes may chase it down or infection, etc. But we're not able to do that on lead. We can't chase a deer down and bay it up. So we still got to figure out all the things we want to display. But there's going to be some interesting thing, and it'll answer the question we get a lot: is what's the best breed? Is what people usually ask. We're not going to show you the best breed. We'll just show you certain breeds that people favor depending on where they're at. So like right here where I'm at in Minnesota, I'm not going to use a little dog like a Tekel because we've got too many wetlands and marshes.
Right.
They're too small for that. But you go to another place where it's flatter and drier, that may be a popular breed there.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's
But
that's
I
actually
would-
really smart.
And so I have a Boykin Spaniel as well, and I'll tell people this: if you get a hound, be prepared to be pulled through the woods. And so I wouldn't get a hound. I wouldn't get a hound for my next dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could run off lead, I would. But
Sure.
So can you not run off lead in Minnesota?
no.
Okay.
And I don't know why. It's most of it. I think is the thought deer hunters think we're gonna hunt deer with dogs if they start doing that. But
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it'd be nice to do it because there's a lot of times where there's some thick nasty stuff, and it'd be nice to, especially when the dog's trying to work out a scent line. Like it struggles and it's doing all this squirreling around and stuff, and I got to follow that dog through all that back and forth for 30 minutes. It's a pain in the butt.
Well, I think you touched on it earlier too. It kind of goes back to that thing of how cute does the animal have to be before you start caring about it? Because like if you think about pheasant hunting, grouse, like that animal has not even been shot at yet, and they're still off lead chasing it, right? So it's bird and a deer. I mean, they're still animals.
It's not necessarily how cute it is. How valued is it?
Sure, that's a good point too.
Because you look at like a squirrel or a rabbit. People don't. If you busted somebody for poaching squirrels and you busted somebody for poaching deer, which posted on social media, which one's going to get the most outrage?
Yeah.
The deer.
Yeah.
So I've kind of got a twofold one for you here, and I'm sure this is the question everybody kind of wants to hear. What are some of the most unique, or I shouldn't say unique, what are the most common things that you see in terms of shot placement, and then also just what people use for choice of either broadheads? I just feel like that's always the hot button item, and I'm sure that you've seen your handful of different cases.
I think the shot placement is all over the place, but I think the one thing that hunters still haven't quite learned, and I see too much of this, is they don't understand the anatomy of where the spine comes down, and so that's that high shoulder shot all the time, and people don't realize that there's nothing up there but meat, and you still see it on post stuff. People say, "Oh, that's a dead deer. That's the lungs." I'm like, no, it ain't. The other thing is not necessarily shot placement, is blood. People post. Just had a post the other day in Minnesota. I don't know if you saw it on one of the bow hunter pages.
I think I saw that one.
It's like one leaf with a few drops. And I replied to one of the guys. He's like, "That's a lot of blood. That deer's probably dead." I was like, "It's a leaf with 3 drops of blood. That's not."
It's far from a lot of blood.
Dead deer.
Yeah, a deer's got to lose like several quarts or like 6 or 8 quarts of blood or whatever it is. This is a ridiculous amount before they die. And if you poured out that much blood on the ground, you'd think 10 people were killed there.
I think people mix up lung blood a lot too. They just see bubbles and they assume that it's lung blood.
Yeah, we get that all the time, and bubbles can form in blood in a number of ways. Just when a deer's standing there like a muscle hit, and that blood's just pouring out, it'll form bubbles. The the best way to tell if it's lung blood, or not the best, but one of the ways is to look at the size of the bubbles. If they're small and
right?
uniform and a lot of them, that's probably lung blood. If they're different sizes, big ones, little ones, medium ones, and kind of spaced out, that's just bubbles forming from, for whatever reason. As the deer's running, it's, the blood's coming out and the hair's rubbing it and it's foaming it up. But even if they're all teeny and, uniform and a bunch of them, that's not 100% guarantee that that's lung blood. But that's better odds that it is, I basically, when I'm tracking, I just ignore bubbles. I'm looking at the color of the blood and and different things like that and how much it is.
What would you say is like the one, maybe not the one, because there's probably obviously multiple, but like one of the biggest shot angles that give hunters the most issue of not, having a clean shot or a clean kill?
Those quarter and two and facing two shots. But those also end up, because people still want to aim for the shoulder, those end up being favorable because when a deer's kind of quarter two, what's right behind the shoulder is lungs, liver, guts. So you get into stuff like that.
Get all of it.
Quartering away, we see people aiming for the shoulder, but then they hit forward of it and get just, slide either under the leg or get into brisket. So, there's quartering two, hard quartering two and facing two are not favorable shots, but it ends up with a lot of recoveries because they end up getting into the guts and stuff. So, there's pros and cons to every angle. I think probably one of the best angles is just, I don't know, I had to look at the stats, what the app's saying, but, broadside or quartering away is, I think, some of the best shots as far as killing the animal.
Yeah, I think a big thing too is that I've learned through my years is looking for your exit hole. Like you're talking about there. What are you going to be hitting based on how that deer is standing from where you're positioned to? Because a lot of guys up here in the Midwest are obviously shooting from an elevated position. You start getting past the Dakotas and stuff. It's all you're level with that deer.
Yeah.
So a lot of that changes based on how high up a tree you are, or if you're ground level with them too.
I'd say the best advice I could give someone, no matter what the angle is, aim for the bottom third. Split the deer into three places, and I like to aim for like where the bottom third meets the middle third.
Okay.
Like right there.
Yep.
No matter which angle it is, I think one of the biggest things we have for non-recoveries is too high of a shot. And people aim for like center of mass, and then the deer drops, and then they hit it up there in the back strap or something. We see a lot of those come in, those requests, and it's like if you look at the coordinates of the deer on the app, it's like I hit it in B2, 1 or 2, I'm like, oh, we're not finding that deer.
Yeah, that's funny.
We'll still go track them, but we know what our odds are.
Yeah.
It's the interesting thing too. I feel like that was kind of a fad for a while, where people just tried to get as high as they possibly could into a tree, which was, in hindsight, really just making what they
target
shoot
smaller.
Yeah, and I feel like now, like especially with like Cody DeQuisto and stuff, like he's been big on that of hunting really, really low now, and even people like hunting on the ground. Like my brother, he's funny. He likes to hunt on the ground, and he's kind of inspired me to start hunting on the ground now. So it's like I've got my tripod ready to go, and I'm going to try to, not even just blind sitting, but just sitting on the ground. I know that's something that you like to do, right?
Yeah, I've only been in a tree twice this year. Out of the 10 times I've hunted, 9 or 8 times I've hunted, something like that. So I tell you, I like hunting on the ground because I don't have to carry as much gear, etc., and and it allows me to get into places where there's no trees. But at the same time, I don't like it because when you're elevated, especially in more open terrain, even if nothing comes near you, you're able to basically observe other spots and glass and stuff. So you lose that advantage being on the ground. Basically, it's all in. You get to the spot. Like, this past fall, I was in a spot, and I committed to it, and all I could see in front of me, was, what's right there. If a deer didn't come, then I didn't learn anything about the area, deer traffic, travel-wise.
I think about some of the times that I've sat in a swamp, kind of like that was back when I was really heavy into listening to Dan Infalt and stuff like that, and literally sitting on, my stool in the swamp and sitting on one trail.
Yeah.
That's all you can see. You got reeds that are 6, 7 feet tall, and you're just sitting there waiting. But that's a cool experience. But I just kind of got one more here before we transition into kind of talking about just some early season, mid season tactics. And I know you guys got it on your site, but how do you feel now with the drone recovery services that have kind of come about now? Like, how do you feel like that's kind of changed the industry a little bit?
I don't know if it's really changed it. I mean, I think I'm kind of pro drone. I think there's a place for them. Obviously, they're going to struggle a little bit in the early season with canopies and stuff. But there's a lot of benefits to the drones. There's like in where I live right here, there's a lot of property lines, and instead of knocking on 20 doors, I could fly a drone if it was legal and check for the animal. When you're tracking with a dog and you hit a property line, you can't get over there onto the neighbors. You could fly a drone. But there's also some cons to it. Depending on weather and high winds and or restrictions from the FAA on places they can fly. There's things like that, and you also don't learn what you learn when tracking with a dog. I can see the blood and other things, and I know a direction of travel where a drone doesn't have that long distance of travel. Because we're on the ground seeing that. But again, there's other pros. If you find the deer alive with a drone, you're not bumping them potentially. Where a dog, sometimes we jump them out of their bed and they're still alive, and we got to back out and give them more time. So
Sure.
there's both have their pros and cons. Well, I was getting at. I lost my train of thought. There was something I was going to touch on, but anyway, yeah. I think there's a lot of dog teams that are getting drones because they see the use, the benefits of it. And it'd be nice. Like I tracked a deer last year that I didn't see the deer, but I thought I heard it get up, and then we found fresh blood droplets, and so I was like, we can't keep pursuing this deer. But it would have been nice to get a drone up and find that deer, 300 yards ahead of us, bedded again, and look and see exactly where the deer was hit. That's a benefit of a drone, being able to actually video the deer and see where the wound is, and then you can analyze. All right, it's hit here. We need to give it another 6 hours and then go in there and get it. It would have been nice to see this on the deer I was tracking because the hunter told me where he hit it. But you know how reliable that is sometimes. No lighted knock. It was in the heat of the moment. He had to hurry up and shoot,
Yep.
and so those things like that. Yeah, so it's nice to have it in some cases, but like I said, the early season they struggle. And I think if a deer's submerged in water, sometimes they struggle to see the deer, where a dog's still going to find it out there most times.
Sure. So I just want to kind of paint one scenario quick for people that maybe aren't experienced trackers in their own right, but maybe don't know about the TRAKR app too. So maybe just walk me through what it'd be saying that somebody shot a deer. What is the point where they're going through tracking this deer that things are getting a little bit tough? Like, what's a point that they should take a step back? They should maybe download the app and just kind of go through and walk me through that process of like how they would get into contact with somebody.
Yeah, so we already touched on how you decide when you need to back out and get a dog. So we'll just say, okay, you made the decision that, okay, a dog or a tracker, I shouldn't say a dog, could be a thermal drone as well. Basically download the app, create an account, say I'm a hunter, and basically I think it's just your email and phone number. Then you hit the request a tracker button, and it's going to ask you like your location, what did you shoot, position, all the things the tracker is going to ask you on the phone anyway. Like, what was the deer's reaction? What did you shoot it with? Are any property lines nearby, et cetera, et cetera. So it goes through there. It's like 3 or 4 questions on each page. I think there's 5 pages total. It just flicks through. And then at the end, as a new feature on the app this year, you can decide who gets your request. Dog trackers only, drone operators only, or send it to all of them. Because we had that request from hunters last year where drones were offering their services, but the hunter didn't want to use a drone, or vice versa. So you
Sure.
basically hit submit, and it sends out a push notifications to all the trackers, and then they'll get the notification. They'll see the track, all the details, and then they can hit a button that says offer their services. So you'll get notifications that 2 or 3 trackers, for instance, maybe offer their services. At that point, you can look at each tracker's profile. All right, this is a drone operator. He charges this amount. He's been doing it this many years, et cetera, et cetera. All right, this is a dual team, dog and drone. I know one tracker, it doesn't charge anything. He's absolutely free, and he has a dog and a drone. And so then you might say, okay, that's the guy for me.
That's right.
So that's, I guess, back to the pros and cons of drones. I don't think there's any drones out there that do it for tips, but there's a lot of dog trackers that do it for tips. So, and you can always have a dog come out and then follow it up with a drone if you don't believe the dog knew what it was doing, especially if it was a tip-based dog. But yeah, so that's the process. Once you determine your tracker you want to use, you hit accept, and then you guys talk to each other and arrange a time to come track. And when they're done tracking, the tracker will mark the track complete, and it goes into the analytics, and you're done. And it's free for all of that, for the tracker and the hunter to do all that.
I tell you what, I mean, I don't get to a point where, I make a marginal shot where I have to use it, but I'm kind of excited to use it just to kind of go through that experience.
Yeah.
But I think it's such an awesome tool that you put together for just basically breaking, like I was saying earlier, kind of breaking down that barrier for maybe people that didn't know about tracking and getting people into it.
Yep.
Or
if you're traveling out of state and you don't know who to call.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
that's a big one.
I mean, that would have been a good one for me, and now I know. So I've had my woes the last couple of years.
Yep.
So
THP, the hunting public, they just posted a video Monday night. Where Zach used it.
Oh, really?
He submitted a request on the app, and he had a tracker there, that evening, and found the deer that afternoon.
Wow.
So, he didn't know who to call in North Dakota.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No man's land out there sometimes.
Yeah.
So kind of transitioning here a little bit. I know you've said you've only been out a handful of times so far, but now that we're kind of getting into that little bit of that transition where we're finally kind of getting that first big front to move through, like what's kind of going through your mind these next couple of weeks for getting out in the woods?
Well, I'm kind of upset that I haven't been out more, because there's a lot of my strategies was based on September heat. Some of these areas were water sources, where I could get a doe, perhaps with my recurve. I did go to one of my spots I scouted this summer that I thought I would have a good opportunity at, but I should have took more time when I was scouting it to look at where I would set up, because I got in there and it was so thick. Everywhere that I could sit and be ideal, location for the wind or whatever, there was no shot opportunity. And then my haste, I found a spot where an old tree had fallen down years ago, and it basically rotted away, but it created like a lane through all the little buckthorn and stuff, right to the deer trail. And I'm like, okay, this is a good spot. I forgot to think about the marshes over here, because as it got near dark and the wind quit blowing, that warm sun hitting that marsh sucked all that cool air out of the woods, and it was sucking my thermals right to that trail. And I'm like, the only bright side is there was no mosquitoes out biting me. So
that's a big
plus.
bright side.
Yeah. But going into like right now is, if I can get out this week, which I doubt I can, with my daughter's got volleyball, and so I'm watching those games in the evenings. But as we get into next week, I have a few spots that's not water dependent. I have a lot of spots that's not water dependent, and I've scouted during turkey season. I found spots, and basically what my big focus all my life has been travel corridors, stuff like that. And so I have some areas that, funnels and stuff that pinch deer down that I'm gonna just focus on. It's not a super, elaborate strategy or anything. It's basically I found a spot where deer have to travel through here to get from A to B, and I'm gonna be waiting. So.
So is that what you meant then? Just going back a little bit to not being water dependent spots.
Yeah, it's I got a spot that I figured the deer are bedding over here and they're headed over here to feed or whatever, and this spot here next down, it makes it a good spot to cross or whatever, or come through here, and it's like three or four trails converging, and they've eat up the bank going up. And I mean it's a dugout ditch from them using it. So that's a heavy use area. And I may get lucky and a buck comes through that same spot. Some of the other areas as it gets into October, I'm gonna start looking at these spots where I can target bucks that, from my knowledge in the past, where they like to travel as they check for does or whatever, or where they scrape, or just their travel paths. Ideally, like in open terrain, it's sorry, my voice is getting a little dry here. Open terrain, anytime I can find like a tree line or just a lone tree, those always seem to work out for me hunting those things. The deer like to work that tree line to get from the big block of woods here to this other big block. Or out in the cattail marsh, there's a tree on the edge. They look at that tree because they can't see anything else, and they seem to come by it.
I think it's amazing how deer, kind of like what you're just talking about there, and it's I think through the latter years of hunting now, it's taken me years to kind of figure it out. But it is amazing how they kind of do recognize landmarks and then they're always using the terrain to their advantage. Like especially where we're at in southeastern Minnesota on our farm, like I never understood why deer would take a fence line it's just not even a fence line. It's just an old fence row that used to be there that maybe the vegetation's like a half foot taller than the other stuff around there, but they're always taking that corridor path down that fence line rather than taking the two ideal paths that I would think that they would take. They still take that fence line every single time. But it's interesting.
The way I look at it is, it's what would I do? If I'm out in the middle of a cattail marsh and I'm trying to get out of there, I'm looking for a reference to walk to. So I'll see that tree to the treetop in the distance, and I just walk to it to get out of there. Or cornfield also. If I'm in a big field and there's no clear path across it, we have a tendency as humans to walk that fence line. I can think of a place I turkey hunted in Iowa, and it was like a mile and a half across this ridge from one side to the other. There's just open prairie grass on top, and I just walked up to the fence line and then walked it all the way across. It was a nice, easy. I don't know if it's just a reference for me or what. I just walked it, and so we have the same tendencies. It seems like I think it's something for us to guide us without actually thinking anymore. If you don't have a reference around you, you're constantly having to look at Onyx or look at something to get through. In the timber, if there's an old fence line that you can follow, like some of these spots I go hunting for turkeys, for example, in the dark. If there's a fence line going up through the woods, where I don't have to run my flashlight or look at Onyx all the time, I'm gonna walk that fence line up through the woods. Stuff like that. It's just I think it's just natural tendencies.
I like that. What is your take on moon phase?
It's irrelevant.
You think?
It's I've always thought it was irrelevant, but
yeah,
I like a full moon because it helps me get in and out of the woods in the dark.
Yep.
But and it's just my thought that I never saw anything beneficial as far as any increased movement, or I didn't notice any. And now it seems like GPS studies, and then the fella that has that thermal drone, he's doing those YouTube videos. I'm sure I'm talking about Derek, whitetail research, whatever it is. He's seeing the same thing, that phase doesn't matter. It's just evenings and mornings and etc.
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing I feel like, I love a full moon too, getting in and out. The only thing I think that's been a disadvantage sometimes is where they can see you a little bit better, because it's still kind of that awkward twilight. But I'm on the same boat. I've just come to realize that weather trumps everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I will say this for some, and this may not even be true, but I like a full moon when I'm going there to hunt in the morning. Because in my mind, I always think that, okay, deer start to see that it's getting just a little bit of light in the eastern horizon, and they start heading back to their bed. And when you have a full moon, they don't realize it's starting to get light, and so they're just a little bit later getting back to bed. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. They'd have to look at, the researchers would have to pin down like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Does it make that much of a minor difference? But to me, that in my mind is like, okay, that's benefiting me. I can get there, and by the time they get to the bed, it'll be daylight, and I can shoot them.
So what are those like alarm bells that start going off in your head when you start looking at then like weather or just conditions? Like when is it when all of a sudden something comes up and you're like, oh, I need to be in the woods this weekend or these 2 days?
In general, there's nothing. I'm just looking for weather that suits me.
Okay.
I like, I'm not as diehard as some people when it comes to deer hunting. I enjoy it, but I want to be
Yeah.
comfortable out there.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
one thing I've noticed that applies, I think, to all animals, deer and turkeys, is if you get those like 2 or 3 days in a row of just cool, dreary, misty days, and it's just awful, and then you get that day that's sunny and calm and and nice. There's a lot more movement on those days. It seems like
Sure.
turkeys are more active. They're more responsive. They're gobbling more. Deer, I get out there that first day afterwards, and the deer just seem to be the amount of deer I see just goes up. They're just happy they got a nice day.
I was gonna say they gotta be in a chipper mood because it's like, man, we just got snowed on for 3 days
right.
and it's finally like nice.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of respect for you that you've picked up a trad bow and you're a fellow trad hunter, and I can't even call myself an official trad hunter because I switch back and forth so many times. But I feel like you have to be a little more hypercritical with your setups, if either it's in the ground or the stand with your trad bow. I mean, is that something that you have to kind of take into account when you're scouting spots?
Yeah, I only hunt on the ground with my recurve. I hunted one time in a tree with it, and it felt so unnatural and awkward because all my practicing is on the ground. And part of me, this is just me, not to say anyone's wrong for doing it. I feel like hunting with traditional archery equipment is a ground sport. If you're getting up in a tree, that just seems like you're adding a bunch of technology to something primitive. Although I am using, I got modern camo and all that good stuff on, but at the same time, I just feel like going out there with just a stick and string, getting down with the deer at their level, trying to not get busted, and get close range. If you're saying, oh, I shot a deer with my recurve at 10 yards and you were up in a tree, it's not the same as I was on the ground, eyeball to eyeball. Not to say this is a competition or anything, but I think people would get a lot more exhilaration, but also a lot more frustration.
Sure.
I'll tell you, it's very frustrating to get in there to a spot, and when you're practicing, you're looking at 20 yards, 25 yards with a recurve at home. That looks like a pretty good poke, but you get into the woods, and every trail that you think is close is 30, 40 yards away. There's and when you get to a trail that's 20 yards away, you feel like you're right on top of it, and I'm like, wow, this is super close. It's not as far away as I thought it was. And so, and I don't know, it's just a lot of frustrations on your setup. And plus, that big recurve just hits everything. I have to have, man, I'd go through a long list, but there's a lot of frustration. And you're going to see in a video coming up, one of my recent hunts this fall, where I'm not going to tell all the details of it, but it was frustrating. You can see in the video me, just the things in the way, just to turn like this, because you got to, and you add your angle, and I don't know, it's just a lot of stuff can go wrong. And I'm like you, I swapped back to the compound for 2 days, and then I'm like, oh, I got to get back to recurve. This is what I committed to, and it's going to be so gratifying when I get a buck with it. But man, it puts you at a handicap.
I remember the one year that I went all in on it. I didn't take out my compound maybe twice, and I went out to South Dakota and I whiffed on a couple bucks out there. But that was humbling going out there with the stick and string. But I'm curious for you, like, how do you, when you're ground hunting, like, how are you going? Because obviously you're not sitting in a blind. Like, how are you going through and blending yourself in, and just kind of getting yourself immersed into that environment so you can have a successful hunt?
So I have one of those little 3-legged chairs that flex and open like that, and has a little cloth on the top, and I actually put another piece of cloth on the bottom, so when I'm hunting in muck and stuff, it doesn't sink. I carry that with me. It helps me like get into cover and be comfortable. I'm getting too old to sit on my knees and stuff. I'm just That's the hardest part, man. Is because you're not elevated, you really restrict on where you can set up. You got to take the wind in factor, the cover. Out west, it's a lot easier because if I'm hunting cattail marshes and stuff, there's little bushes and stuff. You'll see in that video where I just got into a little willow bush, got into the center of it. And I don't know, it's stand behind a tree sometimes. Just stand. If there's the trail, just stand vertical right behind it, and then lean out and shoot at the deer. I find myself hunting deer with my recurve a lot, like I hunt turkeys with my shotgun.
Turkeys. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just sit flat on the ground with a tree right here beside me or something to give me cover, and the deer, walk by. And I've had a lot of luck like that, just sitting down flat on my butt. It's harder because of that big recurve. I have to turn it more horizontal. So practice that if you plan on getting into traditional. Each situation varies. But even that's not easy, trying to figure out a place to set up and still allow you to shoot.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's a really good transition for, if people wanted to get into trad hunting, I think if you're a turkey hunter that doesn't use a blind, you pitch up against trees and you're using cover, it's even if you got a compound, I think it applies too, where it's like you are learning how to hide, where to sit, then you just got to factor in, we joked about that, how far turkeys could see, and then, what it would be if turkeys could smell, it'd be impossible to kill.
Yeah.
But it's yeah.
It's easy to set up if you're only watching one direction. I can just sit here, have some brush and stuff, and then, but in like the hunt out west, I had, possibly opportunities behind me, so I had to be able to turn. If you're sitting flat on your butt, you're not going to really be able to do that with a recurve. So, that's something else you got to think of when you're setting up. Okay, am I only shooting this way, or am I going to have a possibility of a shot over here or there? And then so that's why I like to carry that little chair with me, and I can decide to use it or not.
Do you have a stand that holds your bow, or are you always having your bow in your hand?
It's usually, if I'm just sitting on my butt, it's just laying flat across my legs or something. If I'm against a tree, I may prop it against the tree, just lean it up against it.
That's the one thing I've always been awkward of, trying to where do I put my bow?
Yeah, because it always, because of all that weight of the wood in the front, it always wants to rotate, and then your arrow is just stuck on brush or something. You just got to make do with what's there.
For sure. Yeah, that's a good point, because I'm thinking of a hunt I had out with Evan a few years back, where I'm setting up on this, some of those what are they, shelter belts out by the Dakotas, and I'm just kind of setting up in this pinch point and just kind of sitting there and moving some stuff around, and I had my bow not on my thighs but down by my ankles, just cross my legs, kind of sitting, getting things moved around. I'm sitting there for maybe 10 minutes. And all of a sudden I hear just crunch, 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 crunch coming from behind me. I'm like, no way. And I can see this deer's feet coming through the brush, coming out. And he comes out to the edge of this, and I'm just staring up at him. He's staring literally down at me because I'm out sitting on my butt. And I'm just like, shit, if I move an inch, he's got me dead to rights. So I just kind of waited. He kind of looked around. I'm like, it's now or never. I went to grab my bow, and he was gone. But it is definitely a dance of how to position all your equipment, because you're obviously running a camera too, I'm sure. So trying to find room for that and the bow and everything else.
It always seems like something's in the way. I'll have that little tethered belt, and I'll tell you to set it here, and I'm like, oh, I can't be there. It can't be there because this is and I put it over here now, and my bow is gonna hit it. Did you make eye contact with that buck?
Yeah. Well, kind of I side-eyed him, and he was just staring basically directly down at me.
Do you think deer can pick that up?
I don't know, but I feel like they do. I don't know if they actually do, but anytime a deer's looking at me or anything, I just kind of look over here. Yeah.
I'm not looking at
I don't, or I'll do this. I'll just squint my eyes barely, so they don't see pupils.
See the whites of your eyes? Yeah.
Or round circles, because, that looks like an eye. So if I do like this, but I usually have face paint that kind of breaks that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always kind of nervous that they're going to pick me up by staring at them. So I just kind of look off to one side and look in my peripheral.
Yeah.
It's amazing though. I feel like they can I do feel like they can see your eyes. There's been so many times you get like that what do you want to call it? That lead doe or that mature doe of the farm, like back, or it's like she's staring at you, getting ready to stomp her feet. You know, she's doing the whole twitch and everything, but then you're looking dead at her. Then you move your eyes once, and then blows. And
Yeah,
she's
that's
gone.
that's also why I squint and don't blink, you know, because then they say you do this. So I'm just squinting. You know, sometimes I've even done that, just close my eyes completely and just like, okay, and then take a peek. Are they still there? Are they still looking at me?
Yeah, right. Still looking at me, right?
Well, Shane, this has been fun. I think we're gonna close it out with some rapid fire questions here for you, and then we'll let you kind of get back to your day. But I can go first, Luke, if you want me to.
Yeah, send it.
Okay, so first one I've got for you is what is your, and this could be for your compound or this could be for your trad bow. What is your go-to broadheads for each?
I always use the same broadhead for both setups. This
Okay.
year I'm using the Magnus Stingers. I was using
nice.
some
Yep.
Zwickys before, but they're getting harder to get, because I think the company closed up or it's just the supply is not
Is that a
good.
single bevel?
The Zwicky,
Yeah.
the ones I was using were, double bevel. It was
Double
sharpened
bevel,
on
okay.
both sides. The Magnus is obviously, comes pre-sharpened on both sides.
Yep. Nice. So the next one I've got for you. So what would you say is with your trad bow now? And obviously you've had quite a few hunts under your belt now. What's the ideal shot distance that you would want for a deer? I mean, would you want them to be at 10 yards or would you rather have them at 5?
Anything under 20 for me seems pretty easy. If I can get them at 10 yards and they don't see me, that's a chip shot.
Yeah.
A lot less can go wrong. Let me touch on the first question real quick. The reason
Yeah.
I use the same broadhead for both setups is so I don't confuse anything. It's just easy to have 3 of these, and then if I take my compound, I unscrew them from the recurve arrows and put them on it. So that's why.
Well, they're expensive too. When you get in
Yeah.
when you get in broadheads like that, they're not cheap.
Yeah, but this question here was the range. Ideally, I try to set up to where I'm about 15 yards from a trail or something. But
Sure.
I practice out to 35, 40 yards with my recurve. So those 20 yards and in seem pretty easy these days.
Nice. So, what would you say is the number one? I mean, we're kind of still in early season a little bit here. We're kind of transitioning a little bit. But what would you say is like the number one tip you would give to somebody kind of in this middle phase right now for if they're going to get out and go out in the woods?
Acorns are dropping really good right now. When I was out the day before yesterday, they were just falling everywhere. And the place I scouted, I looked for these trees. I took binoculars and confirmed they had acorns in them. And then they're dropping heavily right now up here in Minnesota. And so I would focus on those right now. I can't say what's going on in other areas, but that would be my focus.
All I know is I've got 4 red oaks across my driveway, and it hails on my cars every day because it's dropping acorns. They're the most fruitful like oak trees I've ever seen because we've been here for 4 years now, and it's like every day.
Yeah, that's
From the end of September to like middle of October, it's just raining acorns.
yeah, that's what I should specify. It is red oaks that I'm talking about. I don't know how many. There's not a whole lot of the traditional white oaks that I'm used to seeing down south. There are some up here. We have a lot of bur oaks, which I think is in the white oak family. Those always drop early. August.
Early.
Up here. We have some along the road out here, and the sidewalks are covered in them. So those are probably fairly exhausted by now. So the red oaks are the ones that they're dropping heavily right now.
Nice.
Nice.
Luke, what do you got?
I got 2. These are probably could be hour-long conversations, but October lull, myth or real?
I don't know for sure. I kind of think there is some truth to it. I think they still move, just based on what I've read and everything. They move about the same amount. They just don't travel as far, and so it gives the impression that they're not doing anything. But if you can get into their core area, then you could see them. We're talking about bucks. I think does move the same amount all year. They do what they do. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So I'd say there is some truth to it. It's just distance, distance traveled away from one location. They still probably move the same amount in. So yeah, there's that
So
that to it.
kind of, now I'm going to have three, but with what you said there, would you start pushing in closer to bedding then this time of year?
Well, I try to hunt near bedding as much as possible where it's feasible.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I'll hunt like travel areas coming from bedding to feeding if I can position myself there. One of my favorite spots to hunt in Minnesota that I was hoping to get to this week is right on the edge of bedding, like right on the edge, where the deer are probably bedded 50 or 60 yards away from me. That's one of the spots I like to hunt. But during this time of year, if you're worried about deer ranging out, they're not going to range out as much. Hunt those bedding areas are real tight to them.
Nice.
I've got one to piggyback off of that just really quick. So with you hunting on the ground and hunting tight to bedding, because that's something that I like to do too, all throughout the whole year. But like, what's a tip you would give to somebody to being quiet, just navigating through the woods? Because I feel like that's, especially when you're trying to get close to bedding. I mean, like you bump them out, the game's over.
My favorite thing is I used to hate wind when I was deer hunting, and now I've realized how beneficial it is, and the deer don't seem to mind. You just got to be, more aware, and because call it being lazy. I used to love those quiet evenings where I could just sit there and just listen and hear something moving. But it's so beneficial to have the wind. Like I can think of a recent hunt where I needed to get to about 60 yards of where I thought the buck was bedded. And it wasn't because I wanted to be that close. It was because the only suitable spot to set up was right there. And it was windy and a little bit of a breeze, and there would be a gust. And so I was using that to help me move closer through the cover. So if you can go on a windier day, that's nice. And plus, when it's windy, you don't have to worry about the thermal switch as much in the evening, because it'll be a nice steady wind to keep your scent going away from them. So pay attention to the wind direction, for the whole evening, and try to get in there tight on a windy day, because they won't notice you as much or as easily.
Good.
Love it, man. Thank you.
Luke, you got any more?
I'm good. I think that was, like I said, those questions could probably go on for another few hours of just picking ideas and spitballing. But no, Shane, we just really appreciate you hopping on, and wish you the best of luck this fall, not only hunting but with the TRAKR app. And if you haven't downloaded the TRAKR app, be sure to go out and do that. And it's I think it's gonna be a game changer.
Yep. And we have that new broadhead spotlight, so that's going to be pretty interesting to follow along. It's updated as more and more tracks come in, and so
that'll specifically say what broadhead has got the highest recovery rate then.
No, so it's a broadhead brand, so it's all their broadheads. We haven't broke it down into specific models yet, and we are tracking that stuff. But like Magnus is at the top right now, and it takes their recovery rate, average distance to recovery. There's one other metric I can't remember, and there's an algorithm in the back and gives it a TRAKR rating.
Nice.
And and some people are like, I've already seen one criticism. What if it's a head that's used more than others? I'm like, well, if you have 1,000 of instances of this head and 200 of this one, you're still going to get the law of averages. And we're seeing it with some of these heads, and they're like Rage, I think, is in number 5 right now, and it's had a number of tracks come in recently, and it hasn't really moved any. It's everything seems to be consistent. I think it dropped one spot it was in 4. G5 and Rage keep swapping back and forth.
Sure.
Muzzy's in number 3. I think Swacker's in number 2. And the Magnus number 1 currently. But it updates as more data comes in, and I won't talk about it anymore. But it's interesting, and we're going to continue to add other spotlights. Different things, caliber, bullets, etc.
Well, that's the fun thing, kind of diving into the analytics and just kind of having proof in the pudding kind of results, and hopefully at the end of the day, people can get their deer back. And, it's like Luke said, super exciting that you guys kind of got this launched off the ground. And if you haven't downloaded it yet, go download it. But Shane, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and hopping on with us. We look forward to hopefully catching up again this fall and hopefully talking about some dead deer. So
Sounds good. I don't like ending the podcast because now I got to get back to work on this floor. But
Yeah, that's right.
it's nice talking with you guys.
Awesome.
Appreciate you, Shane.
Thank you, Shane. Thanks, guys, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through faith in the great outdoors. We hope today's episode has inspired you to seek God's presence in the wilderness and deepen your connection with nature. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Wild Faith Podcast on your favorite platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll continue to be a part of the Wild Faith Podcast community. We'd also love to hear from our listeners, so please don't hesitate to reach out with your questions, comments, or topic suggestions. You can connect with us on social media or through our website. Your feedback is important to us and helps us improve and tailor our content to better serve you. And always remember, the great outdoors isn't just a playground for hunting and fishing. It's a sanctuary for finding solace and spiritual renewal. As you gear up for that next adventure, I pray you find God's presence in the crackling of a campfire, the thrill of reeling in your catch, or the quiet solitude found in nature. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Wild Faith Podcast. Take care, and God bless.